Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku, back with another video. And today we're going to talk about a bit of news, interesting news. Take it as you want. So, there's rumors, again, we take rumors here with a great assault. But the rumors are now that Hugh Jackman is being offered the role to come back as Wolverine if he wants to. And if this is true, I think this is a good move by Disney. Replacing Hugh Jackman is going to be astronomical for any actor to come in there and replace him. I don't even care if you get someone that's kind of close to what Hugh Jackman looks like. Okay, that might just make it even worse, honestly. Trying to get someone to look more like the way Hugh Jackman looked like as Wolverine, rather than do it the way the comic book is. I think that might be even worse because, again, now you're trying to be the Wolverine that Hugh was. So, I made a video covering Hugh Jackman a few months ago and how really hard and difficult it is going to be to replacing him. Well, like I said, and this is my opinion, and I'll say it again, I always feel like someone like Hugh should have a chance to come back and play his role in the MCU as Wolverine. That's, of course, if he wants to. This doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying that, he's forced to come back. No. I'm saying that if he wants to come back, he should be allowed to come back because Hugh Jackman wasn't this one movie superhero. This guy did the superhero role as Wolverine for 17 years. From the highs and the lows, he stuck with Fox and still continued playing this character. Okay, for multiple movies. Okay? In a time when there was no MCU, superhero movies weren't the norm like they are today. I mean, you had your DC films, you had your Batman films, obviously, but the norm wasn't there, because there wasn't a Marvel Studios yet. You had independent studios, buying up character rights to make movies from Marvel Comics, because Marvel was in a different place. They were in the verge of bankruptcy, so it was a much different place. And these actors, the way they are and the way they were, had to define these characters. For most part, trying to do their own thing. And there are some people that gave him direction too. I think Hugh had even said the story that, when he first heard about the Wolverine, he actually thought it was a wolf and not, an actual superhero. So you can just tell that not even Hugh really knew what he was getting into at the time. But this is the role that really has defined Hugh Jackman, and it is really a defining superhero role. Hugh Jackman has been the Wolverine for 17 years. Okay, 17 years. That is longer than any superhero actor yet to date. He's in the he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the longest film movie Hollywood superhero on the big screen. And he did this during an era when there was no Marvel Studios. Now in today's era, of Marvel Studios, and even to a certain extent with DC, Warner Brothers, a lot of these characters are kind of like this is the boundaries you have to go. You have to do this, you have to do that. Hugh didn't do any of that. Hugh was kind of, he had to define the role himself. He had to make the role. where a lot of these other superheroes actors, they have to take the role of the comic book character and really define that, which sometimes can be more of a challenge for a lot of these actors. Hugh didn't have to worry about that. And so, Hugh kind of made his, own Wolverine character, but still, still had, a lot of the influences from the comic books. But it's a role that lasted 17 years. And it tells you, and that's no run-of-the-mill accident. That's no run-of-the-mill accident. Hugh Jackman earned those 17 years of being that character. Sweat, blood, and tears of putting that work in there. Being a superhero actor is no easy task. It is no easy task. And if you've seen Hugh Jackman's workout regimen to commitment to being this character, you would realize how hard and gruesome it is to be like an action flick movie actor and a superhero one in itself, that has powers and stuff like that. It is very hard to do it. And so, Hugh defined that role. And so, if the rumors are true, and again, I don't like to say this is real because there's a lot of stupid rumors that are coming out. I mean, just last week, people were saying that Disney were considering having Magneto and Wolverine as black. In the rebooted X-Men films. So, I mean, that was just a week ago. People were saying that. Now, today, we're getting new articles about Wolverine or Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine, as Disney's going to offer him to come back to be him now, supposedly. Which, again, I said this before. Hugh, if any of these, actors from Fox deserves to come back to the MCU, it's Hugh Jackman. He defined that role in an era when there was no MCU. And that's not an easy task. That really isn't. Robert Downey Jr., I mean, say what you want. I mean, I know he had it difficult too, but he did not nearly have as difficult as Hugh Jackman did. He had Kevin Feige around, and while Hugh was, Feige was around a little bit during the earlier X-Men films. Feige didn't really have a full budget like he did for the Marvel Studios films. He had more of his creative input into a lot of those films where, a lot of the Spider-Man and the X-Men films and even the Blade films, he didn't really have an influence in a lot of that stuff. He had a couple things here and there, but not really as much. So it was a different time back then. It was a way different time back then for Hugh Jackman, as well as, Kevin Feige, as, he's grown through the years. He defined that role, and he made that role his own. And if it is true that they plan to offer... Now, again, this doesn't mean Hugh Jackman has to accept it. I mean, he might just decline it. They might offer it to him, and he might decline it. I mean, if that's the case, then that's fine. If Hugh Jackman truly is done, and he said he was done after Logan, but of course that was before the acquisition of, Disney buying Fox. So maybe he might have a change of heart if he can get into the MCU. Now, a lot of people are like, well, how can you bring Hugh Jackman in, because the Fox continuity is all cluttered, and it wouldn't make sense, and he doesn't have the fourth wall breaking thing like Deadpool does, where you kind of just shift it in there, Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, because we know he's coming in, no matter what people think. Reynolds is definitely going to be in the MCU as Deadpool. What do you do? I mean, all you really... There's actually a few different ways they could do it. The easiest way is he could just be there, still Hugh Jackman, but it's a different Wolverine. I mean, it would be a reboot. It'd be a reboot, and it'd be a little different because it's not a different actor. but it would still be fine. I mean, I don't see an issue in having Hugh come back. I don't see an issue of Hugh coming back and then just saying that, this is Wolverine, kind of have a little backstory behind where he's been. Maybe you could say the Snap, created the mutants. I know that people have floundered that type of theory around there. That, Hugh is just, now there because of that. You don't have to say that it's the same Wolverine. That this is a different Wolverine, it's just the same actor. You don't have to. And yeah, some people are going to connect it back to the old Wolverine from the old continuity, but again, they could specifically say that this is a new guy, a new superhero, and then it just retcons. And people have done this before. It's not like, Arnold has been rebooted multiple times as T-800, and it's still Arnold Schwarzenegger as Terminator. It's not a real issue. It's only an issue if you are just butthurt about it, really. Deadpool might take Wolverine with them to the new universe, because they got that multiverse movie coming out. They could, do that too. There's a lot of different ways to bring him in. But again, this doesn't mean it's true, and I want to stress this. This doesn't mean this is true. Like I said, just last week they were talking about considering Magneto and Wolverine as black. That they were going to get a new actor and have them be black. Those were rumors from last week. And this is why I tell people you really need to take a lot of these article websites with a grain of salt. Because they're just basically putting their own narrative spins on what they think is going to happen. It's the same thing with the Spider-Man shit right now. Most of these articles are still salty that the Spider-Man's no longer in the MCU, so they're reporting bullshit that isn't true. About, Spider-Man possibly being bought by Disney, which that ain't going to happen. There's a bunch of stupid crap, and I covered that yesterday in my video about Spider-Man. But if it is true that they're offering Hugh a chance to get it, then, if he declines it, then I'm satisfied that at least Hugh Jackman had an opportunity to come back if he chose to. Hugh Jackman has stated that he would have loved to have a movie with Hulk, which, that definitely could be possible because they do have a Hulk in the MCU, and, I don't know how they would title it. Because they don't own the title name to Hulk. They would have to get the okay from Universal. Now Universal is like Universal and Marvel Studios and Disney are working together to do the Hulk film, because I think Universal owns the distribution rights to her character as well too. So there's obviously some type of agreement going on with those two for that show, that live action show they're going to be doing soon for Disney Plus. But if they end up doing that again, the easiest title would be call it is Wolverine versus Hulk. But again, if you do that film right away and not really introduce the X-Men, it would, again, it would confuse people, but a lot of people know who Wolverine is because obviously he just had his film a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2017. Just like 2 years ago, really. So Hugh Jackman is still fresh in a lot of people's mind. The guy has been doing the character for 17 years, and it isn't like Wesley Snipes and Tobey Maguire, who played Blade and the original Spider-Man. They were both good actors, and they both defined their roles very good, but they only had 3 films. That was it. Hugh Jackman had, 15 different films? Maybe I'm highballing it a little bit, but But you get the point. He's been in a lot of X-Men films. He's been in there for like 17 years. Long time. Again, it's really unheard of for a superhero actor. I mean, we're going to get more actors doing 10-year contracts and stuff like that. So it's not going to be as uncommon anymore. But during his time, when he did it, it shows a lot of significance. It shows a lot of significance because there were a lot of great actors that played superheroes. Michael Keaton, he only got 2 films. They recasted him, as we all know, in Batman Forever, and then, the abomination of Batman and Robin. All those guys, you go to all these different actors, they come and go, for superhero roles, but Hugh Jackman never did. Even when Fox was at its lowest point, right? When, films weren't exactly doing the way, the Wolverine films weren't doing that great as they normally do, because there were a couple films in there that didn't do as good as the previous films had done. Even during those lows, Hugh Jackman still stayed on, despite everything. Despite the bumps that Fox had he stayed on and committed to that character. He committed to that character for 17 years. Did not leave. And that just shows you the tenacity of Hugh Jackman, and it shows you the tenacity of him as that character and defined as that character. So, we know Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is coming in the MCU, and I'm assuming his cast of, people that were with him in the movie are coming back too. But there's one person from the X-Men that should come back, that deserves to come back. I mean, I'm not saying all the other people should come back. Especially after the Dark Phoenix thing. That was kind of... Luckily, Hugh Jackman wasn't in that film, by the way. Hugh Jackman was like, yeah, I'm not going to that film. I was like, yep, I'm not going to that one. We already tried this, and I'm not doing the second one. He didn't go into that one. So, he ended it with Logan. And, if he decides to come back again, you guys gotta take these rumors from a grain of salt, because, like I said, next week there's probably gonna be a rumor about Wolverine being someone else, right? Possibly being cast by someone else. You gotta take these articles and these clickbaiter YouTubers with a grain of salt, because, like I said, until Disney says anything or Marvel Studios says anything, we don't know anything. So, like I said, in closing, if Hugh is offered it by Disney and he turns it down, then I'm fine with it, because at least Disney offered it to him. At least Marvel Studios, because Kevin Feige and Hugh Jackman are good friends. They're close. When Kevin Feige was a small producer back in the day at Fox and Sony, he tried to get Hugh Jackman into the Spider-Man film. He tried, and the studios, Sony and Fox, wouldn't allow it to happen. They came up with an excuse that he forgot his costume or something on set. So, even back then, Kevin Feige was already trying to think about getting these superheroes to cross over, and you could tell, Hugh wanted, you could tell Hugh wanted that to happen, and we got that recent leaked of the original plans for the end of the Iron Man film, where they mention and reference Wolverine and the mutants, and they reference Spider-Man. If they had been able to work out a deal with Sony and Sony and Fox to work together on Marvel Studios, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe would be different today. because those characters would be in the MCU. They'd be in the MCU because during those times, the early points of the MCU, Marvel Studios, they were being done by Viacom. Viacom was doing all the distributions for all the Marvel Studio characters that Marvel still owned, like Iron Man, which was what started up the universe. If they would have done that collab, Hugh, probably would have been. They would have integrated all those X-Men and Spider-Man movies, because they were thinking about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the MCU, but it just didn't happen because the studios didn't want to work with Feige and didn't want to work with Marvel Studios. And probably would have had a lot of legalities if Disney ended up buying them a couple of years later, too. So, I mean, there would have been probably a lot of issues at that point. But yeah, like I said, not sure if this rumor is true, but I felt like I should bring it up because, again, Hugh Jackman has been a superhero character for a long time, and I think he definitely deserves the chance to get his role back if he chooses, if he wants to come back. And they, and from there they can figure it out. Spider-Man MCU is out of the MCU, even though he was in it. Now he's not in it, so they already got problems in itself with the cinematic universe. So, adding Hugh Jackman might kind of sway that, a little bit, And you don't necessarily have to make him the only Wolverine, too. I should bring that up, too. You can have two Wolverines. You can have him, and then you can have a younger one, brought in, too, for whenever, Hugh Jackman decides not to do the role for good anymore. You can have it essentially a passing of the torch type storyline. And before people say, well, you can't have two Wolverines in the MCU. Yeah, you can. They have two Thorks now going to be in the MCU anyways. You got the female Mighty Thork, and then you got the regular Thork, the original Thork. So to say that they can't have two Wolverines in the MCU, to me, I think is kind of dumb. Because they're obviously picking up with the multiverse anyways. So, there's definitely a lot of export storylines you can definitely do with this if you bring the Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine. But let me know what you guys think. Comment, rate. Also, click the notification bell for more contents. And also subscribe. And that is about it, guys. I am the SS Ultimate Goku, and I'm out of here. Peace.